Hello and welcome to the workshop Exploring Consciousness-Based Applications for Climate Action. My name is Annalisa Ventola. I am the founder of Public Parapsychology. For this first presentation, I just want to give you an overview of how we came here, how we arrived at this place, and then just a little bit about what we know about climate change, and also a little bit about what the field of parapsychology is already doing. Public Parapsychology got its start in 2006 as my personal blog. And this graphic up here on the right, the black and white one, that was my very first graphic for the blog. And then a few years later, we developed this idea of the butterfly, which the butterfly represents the psyche, especially in Greek mythology. And I decided to adopt that. Um, just a few months ago, we decided to give Public Parapsychology a reboot as a community website, partially in anticipation of what we're doing today. And we're going to be doing some other citizen science based projects on other topics in the future. And so this last graphic is what we're doing now for the community. So our mission is to explore the art, technology, and science of various topics associated with exceptional experiences and phenomena collectively referred to as psi. Now, by psi, I mean psychic functioning. I know others are going to probably explain psi very well, so I'm not going to dwell on it too much, but we're talking about roughly ESP, extrasensory perception, telepathy, clairvoyance, psychokinesis, and some even will consider like reincarnation or hauntings and poltergeists is perhaps also a function of psi. Public parapsychology supports the discussion of parapsychological research in light of social values such as equality, justice, and freedom, ecological values such as global health and sustainability, and intellectual values through constructive dialogue with and among students, citizen scientists, professional researchers, diverse communities, and political and cultural leaders. And we promote public scholarship by advancing parapsychological pursuits that inform and are informed by the public good, boosting the development and transfer of knowledge and technology, educating the public about what career scientists do, and most importantly, listening to the public about what research needs to be done. As I rebooted public parapsychology, I decided that we needed a position. And so our position statement is this: Psi exists and it belongs to everyone. Now, that's not a super controversial statement. Psi can be referred to as a statistical anomaly that we encounter over and over again in rigorous laboratory research and have not yet explained. We know that exists. And we also know that we can see it exhibited by just about everybody. So Psi exists and it belongs to everyone. Keep that in mind. So I wear a lot of hats. In addition to being the public parapsychology founder since 2006, I'm also the executive director of the Parapsychological Association, and I have been since 2008. More recently, I became a community manager at the Society for Scientific Exploration. I'm also the co-owner and operator of Whitney and Ventola Music Studios. I play piano, trombone. I also sing. I'm a performing musician. And just a tip, if you want to hear some of my music, if you go to any streaming platform and put in Annalisa Ventola, you'll find a few songs. With my PA executive director hat on, I had a conversation with an environmental scientist. This person is here. And they may choose to or not to come forward as the person who had this conversation with me. But I'm just quoting from an email exchange. It was stated that PA members can continue their research for maybe a decade or two, but it will be for nothing if humans and most other species vanish under the pressures of global warming. To solve the problem, this person believes that politicians can't do it, business commerce can't do it, religions can't do it, an angry public can't do it. Our only real hope is using the underlying capabilities of psi to transmute some of the atmosphere's CO2 and methane to something less lethal. And then asked that perhaps parapsychologists could be asked to redirect some portion of their efforts from the theoretical, which we're already engaging, to the applied. I took some time after this conversation because the idea of, you know, psychokinetic practitioners transmuting CO2 sounded like a wild idea. But as I reflected on it, I realized it's really not that wild. And perhaps it was up to me to begin to stimulate these conversations because of the many hats that I wear and the many people that I know. So that's why we're here. And also, when I was thinking along these lines too, there were already two great books that had encountered. One is called Subtle Activism, and I know at least two other presentations are going to talk about this book today, and also Greeting the Paranormal. And we have Jack Hunter here who is going to give us a summary of that book. So there's already ideas about how psi or consciousness-based applications might be used for climate action. But again, what we're trying to do with this workshop is move from the theoretical to the applications into the practical. Um, so so I got back to this environmental scientist, and I mostly said, "Well, let me make a few phone calls." And the first thing I did was I volunteered to host a table at the Psi Agora, which is a monthly meeting space for members of the Parapsychological Association. And that is, it happened at Airmeet, just like here. Maybe when you came in, you saw the table rounds for the Agora. We use that for networking, and so people function as table hosts, and then sort of support conversation about whatever the theme of that table is. And so the theme of my table was applying sight of climate change, and I just rang it up the flagpole, and I wanted to see who was going to salute it. Well, people showed up, which is fantastic. And as we discussed things, we realized, climate change itself is a broad problem. And so, while the idea of psychokinetically affecting the atmosphere might be a thing, there will be solutions that also can involve psi and will be as varied as the problem itself. And that the responses of psi researchers will be unique depending on where they're coming from, what lab they're at. If they're citizen scientists, we could address this many, many, many different ways. Anyhow, we decided the idea had legs, and so we agreed to discuss it more at the upcoming SSEPA convention, which was the following month. And so at the convention, which was a combination of the Parapsychological Association and the Society for Scientific Exploration, I hosted a pop-up meeting. And a lot of the people who were at the Agora came, plus a few more. And we realized that we were really onto something. So we decided to start a Slack group to organize. The researchers that gathered actually requested that public parapsychology host this event. And the rest is really history. Here we are. So this is a just a quick overview of the speakers that we're going to see today. And for the most part, these are people who came to the Agora and or to the conference, including maybe one or two invited people. So for today's workshop, what we're going to do is we're going to start a little bit with the theoretical, then we're going to move a bit into the spiritual and ethical, and then hopefully end up in the practical, and I should also say measurable. Tomorrow, well, let me back up. Hopefully by the end of the evening, in addition to the three people who have come forward as project leaders for our actual applications, I hope maybe a couple more of you will be inspired. And tomorrow we're going to have an ideathon. It'll be shorter than this event. It's going to start again at 11:30 a.m. with speed networking, and then I think roughly from 12 to noon with breaks. We're going to do a variety of activities to just kind of collaborate and get really more specific with objectives and goals for what we want to do. And everybody is invited to this because it doesn't matter if you're a parapsychologist or not. Chances are that you have some kind of expertise that can be useful and helpful to what we're doing. And so the volunteers, hopefully you guys, and some project leaders, we're going to gather on January 8th to have a collaborative sprint. And Ramses is going to talk about that at the end of the day, how that's going to work. But we anticipate that it'll be about a half day, 6-hour event. And then hopefully we will have seeded this field with some new ideas. So that's what we're doing. But this is about climate action and is about climate change. And so, very briefly, I'm just going to talk about how we identify the problem. And because I am not a climate scientist, I'm going to go with the latest, most rigorous research that we have available to us. And I believe that that comes from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, who reported recently to the United Nations with this report. It is massive. It is Climate Change 2021, the physical science basis. This report, again, massive. It's thousands of pages. Although there is an executive summary at about 40 pages, I think is very useful, as well as a lot of infographics, which I am borrowing for the next 5 minutes. But in this report, they assessed 14,000 different scientific publications. They had an author team of over 200 authors from 65 countries, 28% of which were women. And anyhow, it was on a massive scale, and I think the information is extraordinarily useful. These are slides from their press release, and we're just going to go over just some facts from this report. And they state that recent changes in the climate are widespread, rapid, and intensifying, and unprecedented in thousands of years. And that human influence has warmed the climate at a rate that is unprecedented in at least the last 2,000 years. And if you look at these charts, this is no joke. This looks pretty serious. So CO2 concentration is the highest that's been in at least 2 million years. Sea level rise is in the fastest rates that they can determine for at least 3,000 years. Arctic sea ice area is at the lowest level in at least 1,000 years. Glaciers retreat is unprecedented in at least 2,000 years. The effects of this, we can expect extreme heat to be more frequent, more intense, heavy rainfall to be more frequent and more intense. Drought will increase in some regions. We are going to have weather that is going to create more fires, and the ocean is warming, acidifying, and losing oxygen. The big thing in this report that was different from all the others is these 200 some scientists came together and said that it is indisputable that human activities are causing climate change, making extreme climate events, including heat waves, heavy rainfall, and droughts more frequent and severe. Human influence is the main driver of hot extremes, which have become more frequent and more intense, ocean warming since the 1970s, and ocean acidification. Changes we see in the frozen areas of the planet, global retreat of glaciers since the 1990s, 40% decrease in Arctic sea since 1979, and decrease in spring snow cover since the 1950s. With warmer temperatures, the atmosphere can hold more water, which means more and faster evaporation and heavier precipitation. But heavier rainfall also means intensifying dry seasons and droughts. According to their report, they say there's no going back from some of the changes in the climate system. They're thinking more specifically of the ocean temperature, the Greenland ice sheet melting, and the sea level rising. However, some changes could be slowed and others could be stopped by limiting warming. To limit global warming, strong, rapid, and sustained reductions in CO2, methane, and other greenhouse gases are necessary. This would not only reduce the consequences of climate change, but also improve air quality. And the climate that we experience in the future depends on our decisions now. And this is why we're here today. So this report, though, it states the problem. It's not full of solutions. I understand that there is another report in development that should be released in 2022 that is supposed to have solutions. In the meantime, though, I did look for what is the most reliable source that we have for scientific solutions to the problem. And I found the AAAS, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, to be a very good source. They are the world's largest general scientific body, and the Parapsychological Association is an affiliate of that body. Oh yeah, I like those hearts. Okay, so I actually have been attending AAAS conferences for years now as a representative of the PA, and I have seen how they have become increasingly more supportive of citizen science projects, about partnerships between scientists and politicians or community members. And so we're all starting to think about a little differently about how we can collaborate and work on this problem and other problems as well, of course. How we respond is their project on how do we respond to climate change. And you see there's an URL there, how we respond to AAAS.org/report. It's about a 20-page report. It is extraordinarily valuable. It has, well, I'll get to that more in a bit. Let's talk about a little bit what's in the report. So they said that since climate change can have a broad range of impacts, the best responses rely on a similarly broad range of science. They're they set examples as physical science, social, economic analysis, but I put in there parapsychology, maybe. There are regional differences in how climate change is affecting communities. Responding to climate change can take two forms. That is adapting to changes that are happening or expected to happen in the future. We call that adaptation. Or by limiting the extent of changes that will occur by reducing or eliminating greenhouse gas emissions, and we call that mitigation. According to the AAAS, the best responses will involve both approaches. So together, scientists and community members are seeking resources, sharing expertise, and collecting and using data sets that are relevant for the community. And particularly, these partnerships have been good in the past for vulnerability assessments. Some populations are more vulnerable than others. Elderly people, low-income communities are maybe taking the brunt of this worse than others. So I got to recommend the report because it is it not only does it sort of identify the problem, but it has a collection of data resources. It has a collection of communities of scientists who are willing to work with citizen scientists and community members. And so it's really a fantastic resource and could be something that we even use in the projects that we're stimulating today. And then another interesting thing I think what might stimulate some creativity, at the YouTube channel for AAAS, they have these community spotlights on how we respond. This graphic came out terribly, but they have these short, like 2 to 4 minute videos describing how particular communities are solving problems related to climate change in their own particular way. And you will see that there is a wide variety in how these things are approached. But let's talk about how parapsychology is responding so far. There's at least one completed sci research project that has addressed climate change. And I'm very grateful that Julia is going to be here. Julia Mossbridge is going to be here to describe this herself. But the long and short, two atmospheric scientists agreed to take the abilities of skilled intuitives seriously. 6 intuitives responded. They were given 10 questions. Here's a sample. Assuming we solve climate change in the future, describe the most crucial piece of information or technology needed to do so, so we can potentially take action in this direction. Great question to ask. Uh, the long and short of it is that the atmospheric scientists came away with some testable hypotheses. I'm looking forward to that presentation later today. This is David Luke. He couldn't join us today. With any luck, we may have one of his students, though, speak with us later, Pascal Michael. This is a project that is in progress. It received a grant from the Parapsychological Association back in 2020, but of course, uh, worldwide travel has been a bit difficult. So I don't think the project's taken off yet, but they do have a pilot plan on developing a naturalistic experimental field study testing the reported ability of Huichol shamans to manipulate local weather systems in northern Mexico. Is using a multi-methods approach combining ethnography and parapsychological experimental field research design. Uh, he and Dr. Danny Caputi are exploring the claimed ability to produce rain in a chosen dry location within a pre-specified time period. Researchers will calculate the probability of rain in that location using current forecasting models based upon weather surveillance radar data from the time at which the challenge is accepted. And their hypothesis is that weather shamans will be able to produce rain on demand more often than is expected by chance. So that's one completed, one in progress. And now I want to talk about our potential future. Can one or more humans, endowed with maximal psi capabilities, alter the character of the atmosphere, permuting greenhouse gases to something or some things less dangerous? Should they? Can psi practitioners affect weather systems generally? Can large groups of meditators suddenly affect our planetary emergency? Could there be an app for that? Now, because I am not a climate scientist, I'm not an expert on these topics, I'm just a concerned citizen. I'm not going to be taking any questions. We're going to do instead what I'm calling reverse Q&A. I'm going to post some questions to you, and then I'm going to invite you as soon as the session closes to take the table at the in the social lounge and discuss this with each other. Let your imagination run wild. Or we'll get more practical by the end of the day and tomorrow. But for now, have fun with these questions.